People don't change out of nowhere. They change because something inside them finally reaches a breaking point. Something shifts quietly in the background long before the behavior changes on the surface. When someone suddenly turns cold, distant, or unfamiliar, it is rarely a sudden transformation. It is the final moment of a long internal process you never saw. Human behavior is like a cracking glass. Silent pressure builds over time, and when it finally breaks, people only notice the moment of impact, not all the invisible stress that led to it. The truth is that people change quickly only when they have been holding something in for far too long. It could be disappointment, unmet expectations, repeated disrespect, or emotional exhaustion that has been piling up quietly. When someone stops caring, stops trying, or stops responding, it isn't because they woke up one day and felt different. It's because they spent months or even years hoping something would change and finally realized it never would. Psychologically, the mind protects itself through withdrawal. When emotional energy runs out, the brain begins to shut down unnecessary connections. That's why people who once cared deeply suddenly become detached. They're not being dramatic. They're conserving what little emotional strength they have left. People mistake silence for moodiness, distance for attitude, and detachment for coldness. But these reactions are actually symptoms of someone who has been emotionally overloaded for too long. The mind, when exhausted, retreats. It becomes quieter, more observant, and more selective, and that's when the shift happens. People change when they stop arguing, when they stop explaining, when they stop trying to fix things, because a silent person is not a person who has nothing to say. A silent person is someone who has realized that talking no longer matters. Another overlooked truth is that people change when their self-worth finally wakes up. A person can tolerate neglect, disrespect, and inconsistency for a long time, but the moment they recognize the emotional cost, something inside them snaps. The brain forms a new internal rule: I can't keep doing this. And once that boundary forms, they're no longer the same person you knew. Their tone shifts, their priorities shift, their emotional availability shifts. Suddenly, the things they once tolerated become intolerable. The things they once chased become irrelevant, and the people they once gave everything to no longer hold the same importance. This is not coldness, it's clarity. There's also a darker layer. Humans adapt for survival, not comfort. When something repeatedly hurts, the mind changes to minimize the damage. That's why people who were once soft become guarded. Why people who were open become private. Why someone who used to give endlessly suddenly builds walls. They didn't become harsh, they became self-protective. This kind of transformation feels abrupt to others because they never saw the internal war that caused it. In psychology, this moment is called a cognitive break, when the brain finally rejects a pattern that has been draining it. It's the moment a person wakes up and sees reality without emotion clouding their judgment. And when that happens, change is instant. What people call switching up is usually someone choosing themselves for the first time in a long time. The deeper truth is that people don't change quickly, they reveal themselves quickly once they're done pretending. Once the mask drops, the real emotional state shows. And that emotional state is usually something that has been suppressed for years. So when you see someone's behavior shift overnight, remember this: it didn't happen overnight. It was building quietly. It was growing inside them. And the moment they finally change is the moment they realize their peace matters more than pleasing anyone. People change suddenly when they finally understand their worth, when they realize what they've been tolerating, and when they decide that losing themselves is far worse than losing anyone else. That is the psychology behind why people change so quickly. Not randomness, not impulsivity, but self-preservation.